to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. With liberty and justice for Tamar Rice. With liberty and justice for Eric Garner. With liberty and justice for every black person walking on this earth.
The 1950s and 1960s was an interesting time for people of color. Racism, segregation, and prejudice was blatant and at its prime. The result of these injustices led to the civil rights movement. It was encompassed by several social movements in the United States whose goals were to end racial segregation and discrimination against black Americans and to secure legal recognition and federal protection of their citizenship rights. Well-known figures of this movement include Rosa Parks, Malcolm X, and of course, Martin Luther King Jr.
My country tears of thee, sweet land of liberty of thee I sing, land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside. Let freedom ring, and if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. So let freedom ring from the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire.
My first interaction with Dr. King was on March 19th, 1962. We had been in the midst of our civil rights movement since January 2nd of that same year. And so in one of our strategy meetings, somebody said, we need to bring in a dynamic speaker to try to give this movement a shot in the arm. So we called Atlanta. Dr. King agreed to come and speak on March 19th, 1962. Then we thought we'd have a problem with security. So somebody suggested, why don't we call Oakwood and see if they will allow Dr. King to come there, and said, you know, they already have their own security. And Oakwood had excellent security, just as they do now, you know. And so we decided we would have him speak at Oakwood. And so we went to the airport to pick Dr. King up that morning. It was about 18 or 20 of us, and we were in about 10 or 12 cars. And I had a brand new convertible Cadillac with the top down. Dr. King got off the plane and said, which car you want to ride in? He said, I want to ride in that.
The first Selma March took place on March 7, 1965. An estimated 525 to 600 civil rights marchers headed east out of Selma onto U.S. Highway 80. The march was led by John Lewis and Reverend Hosea Williams, followed by Bob Mance and Albert Turner. The protest went according to plan until the marchers crossed the Edmund Pettus Bridge and out of Selma, where they found a wall of state troopers and a county posse waiting for them on the other side. Commanding Officer John Cloud told the demonstrators to disband at once and go home. Reverend Hosea Williams tried to speak to the officer, but Cloud curtly informed him there was nothing to discuss. Seconds later, the troopers began shoving the demonstrators. Many were knocked to the ground and beaten with nightsticks. Troopers fired tear gas at the protesters while the mounted troopers charged the crowd on horseback. King asked them to remain in Selma for another march once the injunction was lifted. The third Selma March took place on Sunday, March 21, 1965. Close to 8,000 people assembled at Brown Chapel to commence the trek to Montgomery. Most of the participants were black, but some were white, some were Asian, and some were Latino. Spiritual leaders of multiple races, religions, and creeds marched abreast with Dr. King Jr.
And my last interaction with Dr. King was in 1965 on the Selma to Montgomery March. He had wanted some doctors to come and march with the people in case there were some injuries, some illnesses, or what have you, such as people having diabetic reactions, reactions to insulin, getting stung by a bee or somebody fainting or whatever, you know, or sprained ankles and that sort of thing. And I had my doctor's bag with me, and I was short, and there was about 30,000 people there, and I thought, well, they may not know that I'm here to give them care. So I thought, what can I do? I had a pith helmet, a white pith helmet. I looked in my bag, and I had some white adhesive tape, and I made a cross on that helmet, and then I took some methylate and painted the cross red. And then I said, well, now they can recognize that I'm here to give them medical assistance if they need it. And that was my last time that I saw him.
Police brutality, mainly directed towards persons of color, is running rampant all across these United States. Recent events such as the killings of Trayvon Martin, Eric Garner, Mike Brown, Walter Scott, and Sandra Bland have sparked marches and protests all across the nation. One might think that marches are a thing of the past, and that we as people of color no longer have to resort to these types of protests in order to demand equality and end racism and injustice. This, my friends, is a very naive thought, because if there is anything that current events have taught us, it is that history is repeating itself.
Power is never surrendered. You have to fight to gain power.